Welcome back to the Elevate with Us podcast. We are really in for a treat today and a lot of education about something that I believe there's a lot of misinformation on or probably not understanding the importance of it. So I'm really excited today to welcome Reid. He is a lawyer and he is going to share with us his story and kind of why we need his level of expertise. So Reid, can you tell us a little bit about how you got here?
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
I'm excited to have you.
Yeah, this is going to be a good time.
It is.
Yeah, so I've been an attorney for about 11 years now.
Okay.
I'm not originally from Florida.
Okay.
Born and raised in Utah, actually.
In Utah.
And came out to Florida, North Florida, in 2010.
Okay.
That's how I got familiar with the area, and then left, but always wanted to come back, but thought it'd be like
Did you go back to Utah?
I did, yeah.
Oh, okay.
So that's and that's where I started my career as an attorney.
Oh, in Utah. Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And always wanted to come back. Loved it here.
So you just loved it when you were here. So you were here for law school.
I was.
But your undergraduate you got in
Utah.
Utah. Okay.
Yep.
Where did you go?
University of Utah.
University of Utah.
So, pretty good football
Yeah,
team.
yeah.
The year before I started there, Urban Meyer had taken the team undefeated, and they won the Fiesta Bowl.
Oh my God, that's so cool.
So I was like, yeah, I'm going to start, at the university with Urban Meyer. But then that's when he left and went to Ohio. So
Ohio.
And then he killed it with the Jags.
Right, yeah. Didn't go that well.
So came here for school, went back home, started my career. Wanted to come back, but thought it'd be, 25, 30 years down the road.
Like you'd retire here?
Yeah.
Got it.
But 2018 rolled around and was kind of at a crossroads in life and decided to make a big move and came back.
And came back to Florida.
Yeah.
And then when you came back to Florida in 2018, where did you land?
In Nocatee.
So you did land in Nocatee then?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome.
Yep.
In Nocatee, which is funny because we're neighbors.
Right.
But we just met.
Just met.
We have kids around the same age, but it's a really big community. Nocatee, it's like 25 square miles. So it's easy to not know everyone.
Right.
So you came back in 2018 and were practicing law. And what were you doing in 2018 law-wise? Were you working for a local law firm or did you start your own business?
Yeah, I was working for a local firm.
Okay.
It was one of those things where so Florida has no reciprocity for any bar license for any other state.
Oh.
So
you had to take...
I had to take the bar all over again here.
Oh.
And so that's a process, right?
I've heard it's hard.
Yeah, and it takes time. It's not just like they only give the exam twice a year.
What?
Yeah.
For all lawyers, they only test twice a year?
Yeah. So
wow, so it's like a year to basically.
Yeah, so then you take depending on when you take the exam, and then you don't get your results right away. It takes 3 to 4 months to get your results. So you're just
seriously.
Yeah.
So I don't know anything about the bar. It's a written test, or is it multiple choice, or is it both?
So it's 2 days long.
It's like 16 hours.
Yeah, it's 6 hours a day.
6 hours a day.
So you test for 3 hours, then you have an hour break, and then you test for 3 hours, and then you're done for the day. And then the next day, same thing, 3 hours, hour break, 3 hours.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah.
It's
structured differently, right? Some portion is multiple choice.
Okay.
Some portion is essay, so you have to write essays answering questions.
Do you do it in those like books we used in college?
No, it's actually a computer.
Oh, you type it. I just aged myself. Probably kids don't test in essay books. Did you have those in college? Where you like wrote in little blue books?
I didn't.
You tested on.
So in law school, my first year, they were like migrating from that. You could choose to have a little blue book, handwritten essay, or you could write your essay on your computer.
Cool. Wow, so, things have changed.
And then it was pretty much by the time I was done, it was no more. You could handwrite it if you wanted to.
Oh, you could.
But it was. I
hate typing. Is that weird?
Special piece of paper.
I really don't like. I don't know if I'd like it.
So I got to the point where I could type faster than I could write.
Fast. Yeah. Oh, I'm sure I could type faster than I could write. I like writing. I'm weirdo, as you can see. I like notes. So fast forward to today.
Yeah. Fast forward today. So I work for myself. I've been doing that for about a year, just over a year.
Okay. Congratulations.
Well, thank you. Hasn't been without. It's been a challenge, but
I get it.
Any small business owner out there,
yeah.
Right? It
the entrepreneurial spirit is hard.
Yeah,
hard to tame.
yeah. So the background there is that for the most of my career, I had been litigation law, right? So that's courtroom-based law.
Oh.
All right, lawsuits.
Like on TV.
To
We're just going to say it is like TV.
Yeah, it's like TV.
Well, that's fun.
But it's everything that you don't see on TV. High stress, high demand, long hours. And so professionally, I just kind of reached a point where I was just feeling super burned out.
Sure.
Where I wasn't sustainable. Didn't particularly love that type of work.
Got it.
And then, so I was thinking, okay, I got to make a change. I got to make some sort of pivot. Can't keep doing this. And then personally, even prior to moving out here, there was a series of events in my personal life that all kind of came together with the frustration professionally, and then these things personally that directed me to do what I'm doing now. So the short version, I guess you could say, is that the first thing was my wife's mother, my mother-in-law, was diagnosed with cancer, and it was terminal.
Oh gosh.
And it was a very rare kind, and according to the medical statistics and evidence, she didn't have much time. She didn't have any planning in place. And so what I mean by planning is, like, she didn't have a will, she didn't have healthcare directives, she didn't have anything to make sure things were left how she would want them, right?
Sure.
And then a big piece in that puzzle is that she had an adult son who is disabled.
Wow.
Yeah, he has epilepsy.
Okay.
So
so there has to be a plan for him, because she was his primary caregiver. Right.
To an extent, he could pretty much live typical stuff day to day, right? He can make his own food. He could take care of himself.
Got it.
And sometimes, over the years, he had kept simple employment jobs, right? But his epilepsy could kind of come and go in waves.
Okay.
So there's periods where he couldn't work. Anyway, so he'd always lived with mom. And so despite having the time to put some things in order for other reasons, it didn't get done. And she passed away. And then in the wake of that, it really tore up the family.
So that has a name, right? Does she not have a will? Is that called dying intestate or something?
Correct. So yeah.
Yes, I knew a legal term.
Yeah, the legal term for not having a will is being intestate.
Intestate.
If you have a will, you're testate.
Oh, so just no in.
Correct.
Oh, that's confusing. It's the same word. Okay, so basically life
unnecessary.
Right,
necessary,
yeah. So life taught you the importance of having a plan.
Yeah, for sure. Because now, like, through that, the fallout of that, a lot of it had to centered around her adult son, and what happened there. Because now there wasn't people to care for him. He started essentially, to take it one level further, she was married at the time. But the gentleman she was married to, they'd only been married for about 6 years.
Okay.
So he'd kind of come along later in life. He wasn't really a father figure or of any importance to my wife and the other adult siblings, right? So mother-in-law and him had a home together. Son had been living with them. And, he was nice enough to say, once mom passed away, yeah, you can keep living here. That's fine. But within a few short months, the house was up for sale. And he said, you've got to go figure it out, right?
Oh, no.
And so the house was sold. He was kind of just pushed out the door. And
I'm assuming this wasn't local.
No, this was back in Utah, where everyone's family's at. And so he kind of just started couch surfing with other family members and they weren't in great places in their life.
Oh, boy.
And so he wasn't managing his health. He's, of course, like in the depths of grief from losing his mom, who had really only been his only friend and best friend.
Right.
And so then, and then there were some other aspects of things that were left undone, untaken care of, that resulted in some really bad conflict amongst my wife and her siblings, right?
Sure.
And some horrible things were said and done. Yes. And now, years later, we're at a point where she no longer speaks to 3 of her siblings because of the fallout. Because of what happened.
Yeah. Because there wasn't a plan.
Right, because there wasn't a plan. And so, watching this, I say firsthand and secondhand, because secondhand, I'm not the one literally going through it. She is. But I'm watching her have to take a phone call, go on a walk, come back an hour later, totally heartbroken, sobbing, right? And now she's supposed to turn around and also be mom, wife, and go to work and what have you. And it could have been avoided if they had some planning in place.
So, which is where I'm guessing why you started your business.
Right. So after experiencing that, the other big event that I experienced in my own life is that my dad died very unexpectedly in an accident.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
And thanks. And it was one where he actually ended up on life support.
Oh, gosh.
And the decision had to be made as what to do there. And he didn't have any health directives in place or anything. So ultimately that decision fell on my mom. She had to decide what to do. You know, I don't know if fortunate is the right term, but I'll use it. Fortunately, the medical evidence was very clear in his circumstances that there was no probability of being able to continue.
Right.
But nonetheless, she was the one that had to make that decision. And so the day that was done, you know, me and my other siblings are in the hospital room having to reassure her and
sure that she's
her
making the
and
right
tell her
decision.
that
No,
she's
that's
doing the right
very,
thing, right?
I mean, this is some really heavy life stuff that no one wants to talk about. Like,
Yeah.
you don't want to ask or tell or have a conversation about it with family members, whether it's your siblings or your parents, because death is hard and accidents
Sure.
are hard. And it's hard to, I mean, I keep using the word hard, but it's hard to make decisions in a time of uncertainty.
Yeah.
And however, if there's a plan, and
Right.
and that could have been made when you were of sound mind and sound
Yeah.
body, then the people that are left as decision makers have a guide
Sure, exactly.
as to what to do. So we were talking before that there's a book out there that kind of talks about some of these things.
Yeah. And I'm not gonna maybe get the name exactly right, but
Yeah.
I think it's Mom and Dad, We Should Talk.
It probably is. It's just really funny because it's like a conversation that your parents might have had with you, but the reverse.
Yeah,
you
and
know?
so the premise of the book is we've got this massive generation of essentially the baby boomers aging out of the workforce and also passing away, and
Yeah.
a massive transition of wealth and property being handed down, and ensuring that do they have planning in place. So the book is aimed at probably people of about our age,
Yeah.
30s, 40s.
I'll take 30. Sure, sounds good.
Talking to their elderly parents
Yeah.
and saying, Mom, Dad, we should talk. Do you have your
Right.
affairs in order? Because I'll ultimately be the one probably handling it when you're
Yeah.
gone, right? And in a lot of ways, that's really what planning, when I say planning, estate planning,
Right.
you know, putting those things in order, it's really for those who will be left behind when
Correct.
you're gone.
Yeah, no, it's so interesting is, you know, I don't know how many episodes we are into this podcast, but almost everyone that's come on has formed a business based on either a need they saw or a need they felt. That's, I think, how a lot of entrepreneurs start their businesses, because of life experience
Yeah.
kind of led them there, which is exactly what your story is. It's my favorite thing is understanding how people got where they are and how they are filling a need that people might not know they need, which is
Exactly.
I think, because I don't really know the answer to this, so I'm so happy you're here to explain it to me and everyone else, is why would someone, we'll pretend I'm 30, why would someone who's 30 need, or even 20, need estate planning? Because in my mind, an estate is for someone that's over 80.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
seriously, like I decide
sure.
when I say, oh, I'm doing estate planning, that means you're doing it for only people in their 80s, which I'm pretty sure I'm wrong about. So can you explain what it is and kind of why almost everyone needs to do some estate planning,
yeah.
whether for themselves or that conversation with their parents?
Right. Yeah. So I think, in my opinion, the term estate planning is universally stereotyped.
Oh,
right?
I think so. It sounds like it's old people.
Yeah. And so when we hear the term estate planning, it's instantly, oh, that's for a certain age.
Yeah.
You know, that's for a certain wealth level.
And it's like when you're diagnosed with sickness.
Right.
Is when you do estate planning. Like, you don't do it when you're healthy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, we
Just the opposite of what it should do.
Equate the term estate with something like palatial, like a palace, like an estate, right?
And only really wealthy people need
Yeah.
estate planning that have estates.
Right.
Right. And many of them.
Yeah, because we take it to the kind of this literal, you know,
Right.
real estate, an estate,
Yeah,
something
yeah.
big, land, right? But in the eyes of the law is really what matters, right? And so if you own property of any kind, if you have assets, so do you have a home? Or if not, do you rent? Do you have property in that house? Do you have furnishings? Do you have bank accounts? Do you have a car?
So basically, if you're adulting,
Like if
in
you're
any-
adulting, if you in the eyes of the law, essentially, if you own any type of property, and property is a very broad term, right? It
Right.
includes all your personal belongings, your clothing, your furnishings.
That's another legal term I know, chattel.
There you go. then you have an estate.
Right. Wow. I didn't, I never thought of it like that, that basically all adults own stuff.
Yeah.
Therefore, if something happens to, because the sad part is accidents do happen, right? So someone, unfortunately, in their 20s could, need estate planning.
Or, in my dad's case, 70.
Something sudden.
He was great health, active. And we've talked about this in my own family. Never would we have thought that he would have been in the accident that he was in, right? That only happens to other people, not
of course.
us.
Yeah.
And it happened to us.
I understand that. Yeah. My dad's a stroke survivor, and he had a massive stroke at the age of 54.
Wow.
Which is really, really young. And he had bypass surgery. And so before that, because it was a very risky surgery, I know him and my mom went through estate planning and stuff. And I remember them having a medical directive and a DNR and all those things that were signed. I don't know, medical proxy, is that or something?
Yeah, so that's actually a really good segue and kind of circles us back to what I was talking about. So it's like, what is an estate first off, right?
Yeah.
And so we've kind of set out that an estate legally is anything property, but within the idea of estate planning, we also incorporate addressing self-care. So like, if you couldn't make medical decisions for yourself, who's going to care for you, person, right? If you couldn't manage your own affairs, take care of your property because you've had a stroke, you're in a hospital bed, who's going to have authorization to get to your bank account and pay the bills? And so it's that self-care aspect too is also brought into this.
So there's a lot of parts to it. It's not just your stuff.
Right. Yeah.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's all part of it.
So everyone should have a plan.
Right.
Right. But what that plan looks like should be tailored to their needs.
Okay.
Right. So it's definitely not a one size fits all.
So obviously it's really important to work with someone that understands all the intricacies, because it sounds like, not that it's complicated, but there's a lot of parts to it. It's like a puzzle, right?
Yeah.
And everyone's is a little bit different. All puzzles are different. So whatever works for you might not work for me and might not work for somebody listening. Therefore, it's really important to reach out to a professional who has done this and is very sympathetic to it, because you've had two pretty, I would say, traumatic life experiences in reference to it. So you can really relate to the importance of having it, number one, before some tragedy happens. But if there wasn't a plan and there is a tragedy, you'd also be a great person to reach out to, because you can have a lot of sympathy and empathy for what's going on, which I'm imagining you have probably... unfortunately, had some really sad conversations.
Yeah, I have. I've worked with a lot of people, and I've had to help people go through a court process called probate, which means a person passed away. They didn't have enough or the right planning in place, and so the courts have to get involved to direct who gets their stuff, and how much of that stuff they get.
Now, let's talk about probate for a second, because I have a feeling, again, that's something there's a lot of misinformation on. If you've done estate planning or you have a will, do you still go through probate?
You can.
You might still have to.
Yeah. So one of the biggest, probably I would say the biggest misconception amongst the general public is that if I have a will, then that keeps my family protected, and that everything will be controlled by that will, and there's nothing else that has to happen.
And probate's avoided. That's what people think.
And
I think
probate
that too.
Court is avoided. There's no need for court, and everything is smooth sailing, and that is not true at all.
Is that because wills aren't written correctly, or like written with enough clarity that the court doesn't have to get involved? Like what causes a will to make you go through probate? Or I don't know if that was a clear question.
No, I see what you're saying. So whether or not a person, we got to back up a little bit, right?
Sure, sorry.
So, no, that's fine. So when a person passes away, the first question is, well, what do they have? Who gets it? And how do we get it to them, right? And there's a whole section of law on our books. It's called the Probate Code.
Got it.
Which says this is how a person's property and affairs are to be handed down. Okay. So there's essentially two approaches an individual can take. if you don't have a plan in place, if you proactively have not created an estate plan.
Okay.
And again, that estate plan will look different from someone else's, right? It depends on your particular situation.
Got it.
But if you proactively haven't created a plan to address what happens to your stuff, then the default is that the state has a plan for you.
Nice.
And that plan, if you want to say nice, that plan is probate, the probate court. It's the court system. And you're probably not going to like it because, like most government-sponsored programs, you're not going to like how it works or the outcomes that it brings, right? So you can either have no plan and rely on the state's plan, or you can proactively make your own plan, right?
Right.
And so to answer your question, well, why would I still end up in court? It's really what the law says and does and how it controls, right? So in a lot of ways, it comes down to how is property owned.
Okay. Oh,
right. It comes down to ownership type. Is it a jointly held bank account?
Right.
As husband and wife, right?
Oh, gosh.
Because that will control what happens. And that's essentially what the law says, right? So, for example, my wife and I, we have a joint bank account. If I pass away, because she is the other joint owner, she just automatically
goes to her.
Account, right? Now, if I had a bank account in my own name and she was not joint on it and I passed away, then she does not automatically get it.
But if it's in your will and it says she gets it, does she get it?
If I have a will and my will says she gets it, but she just doesn't go into the bank and get the money.
She's not like, hi, banker.
Yeah,
here's
she's
a
not,
copy of the
right.
will. I get it now. They'll be like, no.
Exactly.
No.
And so at that point,
yikes.
She has to go to court.
Fun.
She has to go get a court order saying that she is legally entitled to inherit that account. And it could be legally entitled because she's my wife and Florida law says the spouse gets it.
Right.
Or it could be because I have a will and the will says that she gets it, and it might be a combination of both, right?
Wow, very complicated.
But just because that will is in place doesn't mean that she gets to take that will into the bank and say, look, I'm named in the will, I get the bank account. Part of that is because the will has to go in front of a judge and be verified.
Regardless?
Yeah.
All wills?
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
That it's valid,
okay.
that it's done correctly, and then essentially what the court does is approve it, put their stamp of approval on it, then issue an order saying, yep, this will is valid, it is in conflict with the law, go ahead and
wow.
give the property accordingly.
There's a lot of pieces to this for sure. So let's pretend, someone dies and they have a will and the will is very clear. Let's just paint a pretty picture. Like it's very obvious that this spouse, like there's multiple spouses, the spouse gets this, the children get this, and some uncle gets blah, blah, blah. It's very clear. There's no questions about any extra property or extra bank accounts. How long does it take? Like if, let's just say that person died tomorrow, will it be a year?
So that's a very complex question.
It's all different. Yeah.
Well, so let's back it up a little bit and say, first off, the question is when a person passes away, are any of their assets subject to having to go through a court proceeding?
Oh,
because you could, if done correctly, if your planning has been done correctly, you can avoid having to go through court. Right?
Okay.
Because that's the state's plan for you. The state's plan is we'll take over, we'll apply the law, and we'll dictate where your property goes. Right? That's the default position.
Right.
Whereas if you plan proactively and take the right planning strategies, you can keep all of that from having to happen.
Okay.
And then that could result in people getting their inheritance and all your affairs being wrapped up much more quickly than having to go through the court process, right?
So that's why you need a good estate planner to ensure that everything is kind of documented and in the way it should be.
Yeah, so I have, I've had a lot of unhappy clients. Not unhappy with me, but unhappy because they've found themselves in the position they're in despite thinking they had done right. And what I mean by that is, maybe mom or dad has passed away and they are trying to go about taking care of mom and dad's affairs. I end up speaking with them and I have to be the bearer of bad news and say, no, sorry, like you have to go through court to be able to sell the house, to be able to get the money out of the bank accounts. You have to go through court to do this. And they're saying, but mom had a will. And
so you didn't write the will.
No.
You didn't do the estate planning. They're like, hey, we like you. We know that you're a great estate planner, a great lawyer. Here's this document. And you're like, bad news bears.
Yeah, a lot of times people find out the hard way, right? It's usually something like a spouse has passed away, or a parent, elderly parent has passed away, and now someone's trying to wrap up their affairs, and it's something like they go in to the bank to close out the bank account.
Oh, and they're like...
And the bank's like, no, you can't do this.
Can't do that.
We can't release any funds to you. And then they say, well, what do you need? I need a court order.
Court order.
And so now they're calling up an attorney, hey, I'm being told by the bank that I need a court order. What does that mean? And so then I'm having to explain what we have to do.
Got it.
So now that we kind of know right? Your question, how long it may take. So there's actually 2 different kinds of probate court proceedings here in Florida.
Okay, 2 kinds.
2 kinds.
I'm guessing one's better than the other.
Different.
No? Oh, just different. Okay.
Yeah. So one is called a summary proceeding. The idea there is that there's really maybe not a lot of assets that need to be handed down, and we should be able to do it rather quickly and easily, right? That process, if you're lucky, 3 to 6 months.
Okay, so we'll
probably longer.
Oh, so probably a year.
Yeah,
within 1 year, it should be resolved.
Hopefully, right? No, barring no unforeseen circumstances, right? The other kind is called a formal probate proceeding, and that's
doesn't sound good.
Well, it's more complex. There's more things. I say there's more boxes that have to be checked.
Okay.
More things that have to be done. Generally, because there's more assets. There's more things left behind that have to be distributed out to people, and so there's just more boxes to check to make sure that everything's been done correctly, right?
Got it.
And that process is easily over a year.
Oh, wow. Okay, so 2 different kinds. So I know that in real estate, a lot of people want to buy property in a trust or move it to a trust. They'll ask realtors about trusts. We're not lawyers. We don't provide legal advice. Is that something you do? And is that incorporated in estate planning, or is that separate business planning, or
right?
And why? Like, what's the deal with a trust? I don't understand.
Yeah, sure. So I do trusts. I help people set those up.
Okay.
There are different kinds of trusts.
There's different kinds of trusts.
Yeah.
Okay.
So a lot of it is driven by what outcomes do you want. So the approach I take with my clients or potential clients is first figuring out, what do you want to achieve? What outcomes do you want, right?
Okay.
And then we'll work backwards from there to identify the right strategies to get us those outcomes, kind of a reverse engineer.
That's okay. I love backwards math. It's my favorite. Well, because a lot of people assume things, so I always find it better if you tell me what you want, then I can reverse engineer it.
Right.
It's brilliant. I think it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So a trust is a great way to help people achieve outcomes, depending on what those outcomes are. Does everyone need a trust? No. But it is a powerful tool to achieve what you may want, right? So again, there's different kinds of trusts. The most common type of trust used in estate planning is called a revocable living trust.
Oh, yes.
You may have heard that term.
Uh-huh.
But the short idea is that a trust is essentially a container, right? Think of it as like a backpack.
Okay.
Right? You create when you set up a trust, you're bringing a container into existence.
Okay.
A bucket, a box,
I'm thinking of a suitcase.
Yeah.
Or like not a suitcase, a briefcase.
Yeah.
It's got like little files in it, little folders of different things you can put in.
Yeah, and then what that trust does is you may put the ownership of your property into the suitcase. Mm-hmm. So now the suitcase actually on paper owns the property, but you're the one who carries it around and controls what happens to it, right? So you retain full control of it. It's just from a legal perspective, ownership has changed.
Well, I know that there has been so much learning today. I think that you gave us some really great information, which I so appreciate. And I think the number one thing we all learned is partnering with somebody like you is what we need to do. It doesn't matter if you're 20 or in your 30s like us,
right,
or 90, that having a plan is the best thing to do. So if someone wanted to reach out to you, how do they do that?
Yeah, you can find me on Facebook, Instagram, my website. So my firm is called Compass Estate Law.
Compass Estate Law. I love that. It encompasses like how it directs you. Great name.
My idea there is that I'm here to help navigate and
love
guide.
It.
Right. I'm really big on education. I want to educate you, and then once you know potential outcomes, once you know what you might be up against, then again, let's work backwards and fix that, right? But you need to know first.
Sure.
And so once we have that information and you have that information and you're empowered, then we can make educated decisions and work together. So my website's compassestatelaw.com.
Perfect.
Same thing on Instagram at Compass Estate Law, and Facebook, Compass Estate Law. I'm sure we'll have links in
all the things. And if you want more information from Reid, feel free to reach out to me. I'll point you in his direction. So thanks for coming on, Reid. I so appreciate your time today.
I betcha. Been great being here.
Thanks.